Hello, everyone who has joined us. This is Ukraine Media Center at Ukrinform. Right now we have Oleksandr Motuzyanyk, the Speaker of Ukraine's Defense Ministry. Let us discuss the situation on the battlefields. Hello, dear friends. This is the information concerning Russia's military aggression as of May 25th, midday. The aggressor continues aggressive attack along the contact line and in Luhansk and Donetsk region. They got active in the use of aviation component, specifically the storm and aviation for the support of their advance. Also, they are attempting to detect the locations of Ukraine's air defense and launch new missiles. According to the data of Ukrainian intelligence, to 22 M3 and to 95 160 were noticed developing training operations and launches of missiles. Now information about specific areas. In Kharkiv area, the Ukrainian troops effectively are fending off attacks of the 41st Army of the Central Military District and also the units of the so-called First Army Corps. So they are holding the already occupied lines and preventing Ukrainian troops from further advancement. With this purpose, they have effected attacks on Rubizhne and Ternova, also attempted some counteroffensive in Ternova, Rusketishki, and Petomnik. In Slavyansk area, the armed forces of Ukraine are fighting against the 20th, 29th, 35th, 36A, 1st TA, and 68 AK armies in the area of Slavyansk. Ukrainians have managed to fend off attacks in the areas of Davhenke and Bogorodichne. Right now, the enemy is looking for ways to find weak spots in our troops with the use of artillery and army aviation. In the Donetsk area, there are heavy battles against Russian troops as a part of the so-called First and Second Army Corps, and also the 8th and 58th Army of South Army District, and also the shore troops of the Ocean Fleet. So the enemy is trying to encircle our troops near Lysychansk and Severodonetsk and get to the administrative border of Luhansk region. Specifically in Luhansk area, the enemy intends to take full control over the Liman community, tries also to disrupt the air defense system and also using some electronic warfare systems. But the enemy is not effective in its attempts. Near Severodonetsk, there are attacks as well as near the village of Hirske. In Bakhmut area, Ukrainians are fighting against the enemy near Komyshovaha and Vidrochenya. Near Vasilievka, the enemy holds a position and prepares for further advance in the village of Berestove. Near Avdiivka, Ukrainians are holding the line near Krasnohoriivka, Kamenka, Avdiivka, and Pisky. Thanks to the effective defense of the Ukrainian troops, the enemy is not reaching its goals. And in order to counteract our UAVs, and the comms of Ukrainian troops, the enemy is using electronic warfare. In the Kurakhivsky, Novopavlovsky, and Zaporizhia areas, the enemy is using attacks with artillery, also aviation raids near the village of Orikhiv. In southern Bukh area, there is a Russian military groupment of the 8th and 49th Armies, 22nd Army Corps, and also the paratroopers of the occupier. The main effort is intended to halt our troops and to prevent their use in other areas. In Kryvyi Rih and Mykolaiv areas, the occupiers attempted attacks of communities along the full line of combat, and near the city of Pereslav, Russians have placed 3 heavy systems of flamethrowers. Also, they are attempting to bring in the so-called First Army Corps with a total number of 2,000 people. In Siversky axis, the enemy is strengthening the Ukrainian-Russian border in Bryansk and Kursk regions, again, in order to prevent the use of Ukrainian troops in other areas that would be threatening for it. In the future, there is a possibility of further missile attacks against the military and civilian infrastructure, as well as the use of artillery along the border of Ukraine. In Volyn and Polissa, the situation is not changing. There are up to 7 battalions of Belarus armed forces are allocated along the border of Belarus and Ukraine. And also, as our internal intelligence has come to know, on 7 training grounds in Belarus, there will be practical exercises to test the compatibility of the Belarusian forces, and also some marches of the equipment are going to take place. In the Black Sea and Azov operational zones, there are ships of Russian fleets that are blocking the commercial trade and are also blocking the possible support for Ukraine, also providing support to their troops. Near the island of Zmeiny, 5 caters and the self-propelled crane were used to take out the pieces, the wreckage of the Russian caters, Serna and Raptor. The preparedness for missile attacks in the Black Sea is represented by 2 caliber carriers with a total of 16 missiles that can be launched at a time. And also, meanwhile, the armed forces of Ukraine and the defense forces are continuing the fight against the enemy. Over the last day, 9 attacks of the enemy were fended off, and they managed to destroy 3 tanks, 8 artillery systems, 18 units of battle equipment, special armed equipment, and another vehicle. Also, they've managed to lock down 6 UAVs Erlang-10 and 1 UAV Zala. And the Liman area was the place of the most considerable losses of the enemy over the last day. The general losses of the enemy are represented here in this slide. And that's it from me. Glory to Ukraine. Glory to the heroes. Dear colleagues, you can now ask your questions, please.
Three questions. First, do you still have the control of T1302 highway? Do you still have the control of T1302 highway that is needed to supply the troop in eastern part of Donbass near us?
Дякую.
Thank you for your question. I understand what you're asking about. There are active combat operations happening there, and the Ukrainian troops are controlling that area. We need to understand also that we have other alternative routes of supply for our troops stationed there. Thank you.
Second question. The international agencies spread the news that you are retreating, that the Russian soldiers, Russian army enter and defeat your troop in the zone of Lysiansk and eastern part of Donbass near the friction line. Is it true or not?
I don't know which media and which agency exactly you're speaking about. This is the terminology that is not entirely correct. Indeed, in certain areas, Russian troops have temporary tactical success, and that's no secret. But the fact that Ukrainian troops are stepping back, it's not correct. In some areas, some maneuvers are used just to change the position, to step aside, and to wait for more favorable condition for the counteroffensive. There are certain communities, the control of which can be switched between different countries, so I do not support the idea that Ukrainian army is retreating from there.
Are you preparing a counteroffensive in the Donbass or not?
That's a question I hear frequently. Believe me, right now the strategic concept of Ukraine's defense is to liberate the entire territory of Ukraine, and sooner or later the broad counteroffensive have to happen. But this depends on the general situation that we can see right now in the east and the south of our country. So I'm not ready to say, to share any exact date, but surely we will liberate our land from the Russian occupiers. Thank you. Other questions?
Magazine. Have you noticed a change in Russian tactics in Donbass?
Surely, yes. Over this 3 months of the full-scale war of Russia against Ukraine, there are considerable changes. First and foremost, they have changed their tactics. In the first stage of their aggression, Russia's head staff has failed. The idea was to seize the entire Ukraine and instill pro-Russian regime. So they have failed in this, and they have switched to this second stage. They are focused right now in the south and east of Ukraine. There are certain tactical changes that we are noticing. They are trying to learn and adjust to the conditions of combat operations led by Ukrainian troops. We are noticing that they are not only just bringing in infantry, they are trying to do some reconnaissance, to develop some options, so their actions are not as haphazard as they have been in the beginning. also the advancement of Russian troops is right now happening with coverage from the air, something that we did not see before, and that was the reason why they sustained serious losses even at the stage of the movement of their equipment. So we can say a lot about that, but the main tactic of the Russian army is unfortunately the tactic of burnt land. So they are fully destroying the communities, they are wiping them off the earth, they are destroying the infrastructure with no mercy for people, for the buildings, for the infrastructure, etc. That's the tactic that remains unchanged. So clearly, the the management of the Russian state demands the army to get some wins, and this is how they act to get some tactical advancements and to sell this to the Russian society. That's the situation we are observing right now. Thank you, Oleksandr. Thank you for joining us. This was Oleksandr Motuzyanyk, the Speaker of Ukraine's Ministry of Defense. We are getting ready with a schedule for tomorrow. So